Hi, everyone. Happy 4th of July, Day of Freedom for America. And Americans celebrate this, and it's been going back 250 years. So we have here the celebration of freedom, but one person who's not free is Donna Adelson. My prediction is she'll never be set free from confinement. She's in a county jail in Leon County, which is in Tallahassee, Florida, and she is going to be going to trial here on the 18th of August. There may be a defense request to extend that out. They've been working to try to catch up with a lot of discovery matters, but I think the trial has a. I know the judge wants to keep it on track for the 18th of August, so we'll see if they try to come in with the last minute pitch to try to get it extended again. So I wanted to cover some emotions tonight. And before I do that, though, I just want to acknowledge some folks are asking about whether we're safe here in San Antonio. Here in San Antonio proper, we've not had those horrendous rainstorms that we've had. Just 60 miles from our house here, we've had there's like 13 dead, 23 missing, with some floods there on the Guadalupe River, including a all-girls Christian camp where 23 are missing. So just keep those in mind. Pray for them to be safe, and just a matter of being found by. There's like over 500 search and rescue folks out there looking for them, and we're supposed to get like in that area another dumping of like a foot or something. I've heard again. So in any event, everything's okay here within San Antonio itself. But yeah, what a tragedy. And in any event, I wanted to cover here, first of all, there's a number of things I got to pull up, so bear with me as I'm trying to share those here. Hope you all are having a good weekend. Start of weekend if you had today off. A lot of businesses are closed, all federal courts, state courts, government buildings are all closed. Banks are all closed on this day. And let's see here. We also had the state's exhibit list. So why don't we go through that first here? Here we go. So this is very similar, but there are some differences what we've had from previous trials. So the first three have to do with Geiger's residence, the different views from the street, close up of his house. He's the next door neighbor to Dan Markell's house there on Trescott. He was the one that called 911. One of them, the ones that called 911. And then they also have pick number 4 still from the bus. That'd been a public bus where they had a picture of the hitman's Prius that was fleeing Tallahassee to head back to Miami after they did the horrendous vicious shooting of Dan Markell in his garage. And then they have some kind of ID here for the victim. That's probably Dan Markell's identification, driver's license. Then they have a scene from the street. That'd be a Trescott, and also the garage. Picture of the garage from the driveway, a little bit closer up, perhaps. And then they have some of these other pictures of the actual murder scene there within the garage. I'm not going to talk about each one of those. And then up to 18, then they have a picture of Wendy's vehicle. She was driving a minivan, a Honda Odyssey, which is a minivan, goldish colored van at that. And then they also have Wendy's whiskey receipt, what she purchased ABC Liquor. And then they also have victims' pictures at the hospital, including close-ups, some autopsy photos. 35, they have Wendy and Katie McBanwell on the beach and they also have Charlie and Katie on the Sunset there. Then they also have 37 to 43. Those are ATM's photos. Those would be the hitmen when they're going to get cash, and that would be on the way back from making the hit. 44, they have pictures of Garcia Rivera, someone, Katie and a Jessica, like girlfriends and friends of the hitmen. Then you have pictures of Garcia and Rivera. Then you also have a motorcycle Monte Carlo photo purchased from the money given for the murder. So they had $100,000, the hitman with the middle person, Katie, to split. Then you had another pic of Garcia Rivera, the two hitmen that drove all that way from Miami to Tallahassee, spent the night, and the next day they did that cold-blooded murder. And they also have 47 as a pic of those two hitmen on their motorcycles. 48, there was pictures of the hole in the Prius through line 52. Keep in mind, Sigfredo shot a hole. He was handling the handgun that they used to kill Dan Markel, and he shot a hole, negligent discharge, went through the floorboards, even severed a gas line, which I thought would maybe explode the gas or something, but it didn't. And they basically patched up and continued the mission to do that evil hit. And 53 surveillance images, Charlie and Donna at Montes Close Up. Not sure what that one is about. I don't recall that one. Then they got the picture of the Lexus. That was the one that Kitty McBanwell was given. It was titled in the name of Harvey Adelson. And then there's a bunch of documents here listed on the rest of this page. Who's who with phone numbers. I think that would be like what they showed in court before, like the pictures of all the Adelsons and the hitmen and the middle person, Katie, along with her phone numbers. And then they also show Wendy's iPhone contacts for mom, dad, and Charlie. Also Wendy's iPhone contact for Gibbers. That's the derogatory name she called Dan Markel. Then they also show her iPhone call log, voicemail log, divorce filings. That'd be a massive thick file. That's like 800 some pages. Garcia Facebook pic with certification. There's 2 of those. The pawn ticket was certification. Something was pawned. I can't remember what that would have been. Various emails here. That's probably including the one with Donna where she's talking about how Wendy needs to do stuff to take control and manipulate Dan Markel to giving up custody. The Rivera ticket. Keep in mind you got a ticket on the way up there to do the murder. It was a speeding ticket, and they also had a gun in the vehicle that time. The cops let him go without asking to search the vehicle. And so there is a ticket for Garcia as well. I'm not sure what the second one was for there. Then they also have other records, including gas receipts. Then they also have Adelson Institute record. That's a dental office that Harvey Adelson worked at, and his wife Donna was a part-time manager, and she's the one that wrote the checks for Katie McBanwell, the middle person that was using her 2 children's father to do the killing of Dan Markel, the murder of Dan Markel. They got the Lexus vehicle information there. Again, that's a Lexus that was in Harvey's name, but then they gave it to Katie McBanwell after the killing was done. And they also have the Comfort Nissan contract. Not sure what the Nissan vehicle's about. And there's also a Hyundai contract too. Not sure what those are about. They also have a GPS with certification documents. I think that's maybe showing the location of the vehicle because they had a GPS on that Prius when they rented it. There's a summary communication records that have been probably all the messages going on between the conspirators of this murder. Coastal masonry records, I'm not sure what the masonry records would indicate. And this Dr. Raudner, haven't seen that name before. Broward dermatology records, maybe that's something to do with Katie. Some more things that were done to pay for Katie's involvement by Charlie Adelson and other Adelsons. They got the Nissan vehicle information. There's a Honda Racer information, Chevy Monte Carlo. So maybe these are the other vehicles purchased that we had not heard of before. Proceeds from the contract murder. They also have other vehicle information, registration vehicle apparently. Then we go up to 81, and that's Katie McBanoff's financial records. And then they go through a lot of different breakdowns of records to include banking patterns, purchases after the murder for the two hitmen, summary of Katie's accounts and the timeline, and it shows how she made, what was it, like 56,000 extra in the year after the murder than what she had made in the previous several years. They also show her employment timeline, how she bounced around different jobs, never had stable income, and then suddenly she gets all these big deposits after Dan Markel was killed in January 19th of 2014. Then also heard the checks from the Adelson Institute, so the dental office of the Adelsons. They gave her sequentially a bunch of checks in a row, so it wasn't like she was working and got a check every 2 weeks, and they have different numbers that weren't in direct sequence. So she had multiple sequence checks given to her. I think there was probably like about 8 or 10, if I remember correctly, all in sequential order, and then they had different dates that I think she could have filled in. So they try to hide the fact that they weren't all given to her at one time, but I think that's the fact that they're sequential shows that they were all given at one time, and they were just trying to space it out between them so it doesn't look like she's getting one big lump sum for doing the hit. She also had breast augmentation payment. She said that Charlie paid for more than half of that. And then there's a graph showing the income sources from 2013 to 2016. Keep in mind the murder happened in July of 2014. They also show different cash deposits and different income from Adelson-related sources. Anyway, that's a lot of the other stuff. Adelson investment account totals. It shows total account balance for the Adelsons. I think that's the one we saw last trial. That was over $8 million they had between those different documents that they showed up on the big screen. And other financial stuff there about tax and financial benefits for Katie McBanoff. Okay, then I guess 82 is the actual checks to Katie McBanoff from the Adelson Institute. The others are more like maybe a summary of all the different checks on a spreadsheet or on some kind of a PowerPoint. And then they have 83 and 84. That's the FBI's bump that they did on Donna Adelson. They had a flyer as well as a letter to her. I think the flyer might have been like the newspaper clipping talking about how Dan Markel was murdered, and that was like the next day after the murder. So I think they have a copy of that. That's what those things are, as well as the letter saying, hey, you paid for one hitman, but the other one needs to be taken care of as well. And keep in mind, my theory is that they didn't know about a second hitman. Katie and her kid's father, Sigfredo Garcia, they decided to bring his best friend along. Secreto Garcia, because it was such a long drive. He wanted to have someone ride with him. So that's why I think when they did the bump, they're going, "What? There's another guy out there? What's going on?" So and Katie played dumb with that. So I think they eventually figured it out, but that was only after they got arrests made and the hitmen went to trial. Okay, let's see. The wire call summary, all the different calls, probably the days leading up to the murder, as well as the day of the murder. And they got Celebrate extracts that helps show where people were at, what different locations they were when they're on their phones. Now, this is something new in this case we haven't seen before. Number 87, scan copy the Bernhardt script. So Bernhardt was apparently somebody that was used to help intimidate witnesses, apparently, to maybe intimidate their eldest son, Harvey and Donna's eldest son, Dr. Rob Adelson out of the Northeast. And then they also have a known, as well as Katie McBanois, and I think there was her mother and one other person they were trying to, it looked like, from what we've heard, it looks like Donna was trying to threaten those folks to not cooperate with the prosecution. Then we have a known handwriting sample from the defendant's planner. So that's how they're going to use that to show the correlation between the way the handwriting is on the planner and then also the script that apparently Donna would have given and passed along to this Bernhardt to make some calls. And then they have a 88.9 is map of the Truscott residence. 88's a 911 call. Premiere video clips. That's the gym that Dan was working out at right before he went home. And then we have bus video clips that shows the Prius that the hitmen were driving in, going by. The bus camera got some of that footage. And then they have some CDs, readable CDs. Apparently, that's what the CDR means, for info on the hitmen plus Wendy, Donna, Harvey, Catherine McBanois, as well as Dan Markells. 99 and 100 have to do with the wire calls, the wiretapping that the FBI did for a 2-week period. 101 to 104, those are the tower dumps for the different phone providers that the conspirators used. ATM video, that'd be a video of the hitmen getting cash. Then they have bank records of all the different parties involved, including the Adelson Institute. The bump video, we've seen that on YouTube plenty of times. Those have been following the case. Those are 112, 113. Also, the surveillance video of Dolce Vita. That's a restaurant that Charlie was talking to Katie McBanois after the bump happened, and he was trying to calm Katie down. So that's very incriminating among the conspirators. And then they also have a wire call from Charlie Adelson to UC. I'm not sure who UC is off the top of my head. Then they have the jail calls, all the jail calls. That could be a whole load of information right there. Not sure what time range those are talking about, but those are probably any kind of incriminating call that was made by Charlie or any co-conspirator there while he's in jail. Then they have a thumb drive with raw data from Premier, the bus, LCJ, I assume that's Leon County Jail. Also, they have 2025 Bernhardt recorded calls. So remember they did a wiretap here earlier this year. So Bernhardt would have been on that, apparently, receiving instructions from Donna. Is that the one where maybe Donna was using one of her attorney's phones? Don't know any truth to that. But definitely something was recorded that's most likely incriminating, and we'll see that new this time around. And then we have the eyeglass frames. Those would be Dan Markel's glasses that he wore that were shot apart when he was assassinated, as well as his wallet and contents, window glass. They actually have some of the bullets, which they call projectile. Then they also have the Vietnam visas for Harvey and Donna. And then a painting, 113 here is a painting given to Bernhardt. So apparently to not avoid detection of cash exchange, they gave him some valuable painting, I assume, for agreeing to do this. And so that's signed off by Georgia for the state attorney. And they also have some demonstration. Those are apparently the exhibits that they'll show during the trial, the who's who of the parties, the co-conspirators for this murder, the who's who with financials, showing how much money was attributed to each account. We've seen that before in the last trial with Charlie for the different Adelsons, and they're over $8 million collectively. D is the code words. They had a graph showing what all the different code words meant. And then you have Katie and Charlie's communications demo. And I think we saw that the last time. The wire slides, that would have been from the last trial as well. And also a timeline, showing a timeline how this conspiracy evolved over time. So that's what we have for new information then. That some of it's new, but most of it's a repeat. I think they're going to ask for another delay, but I think that the judge is very much against that. So I don't think it's going to be granted, but they may try to make another pitch and say they're not prepared, and how can we go to trial if we're not prepared to represent Donna? So they've done a lot more groundwork than I noticed Rashmam ever did. So having both of these attorneys that are local there, they've been able to accomplish more in terms of filing stuff. But I think most everything's going to be shot down. I think the one thing that I was surprised on with Judge Everett was he's keeping out the reference to Wendy's book that pretty much foretold the hatred of Tallahassee and of the main author of the book, and her hatred of her husband and mockery of her husband, that kind of stuff. So it really was mirroring what Wendy was feeling about Dan, as well as living in Tallahassee. So this is something that the prosecution really used for the first time, as I recall, in his last trial with Charlie, and they could have even gone into more detail, but because I think it really shows premeditation. So I think the judge got that wrong. He's allowing it. He's initially saying it's not going to come in unless on direct, but it can be used for impeachment of Wendy. So let's see here. Gonna remove this. Stand by. Okay, here it is. Loading up right now. Okay, so this was the judge's order. This was several months ago, but it talks here. He finds as follows: defendant has twice sought to exclude inquiry by the state about Wendy Adelson's fictional novel. In prior counsel's motion to limine, defendant argued the probative value of the novel is substantially outweighed by the danger of unfair prejudice. Yeah, because it makes her look really guilty. That's why they're trying to keep it out. The court determined that the novel could be used for impeachment purposes during Wendy Adelson's testimony. Defendant now renews her motion in limine, further arguing during the 27 March 2025 hearing that the novel is inadmissible because it could cause unfair prejudice, confuse the issues, mislead the jury, and needlessly present cumulative evidence. Cumulative evidence of what? Her intent to kill Dan, and it shows how much hatred she had towards him. This is due to distinctions between the novel's central character, Lily, and Wendy Adelson. The state argued the novel could be admitted as substantive evidence and was ripe for impeachment. Wendy Adelson's novel, This Is Our Story, is inadmissible as substantive evidence because any probative value is substantially outweighed by danger of confusing the issues, misleading the jury, and needlessly presenting cumulative evidence. I mean, this is just absolute rubbish here. It's probative and it's not confusing because it really shows this thing is in the works. This, keep in mind, this book was written several years before Dan was murdered. While it can be reasonably argued aspects of the novel were inspired by the author's life, this is still a fictional novel written by the defendant's daughter, not the defendant. Accordingly, yeah, but it's a co-conspirator. Wendy's considered an unindicted co-conspirator and should have been charged many years ago because our evidence is that strong. Accordingly, admitting the novel as substantive evidence creates a significant risk of the jury getting stuck in the mind of parsing through a non-party's work of fiction and confusing the issues. In addition, the state's argument during the hearing demonstrates there's other evidence reflecting Adelson's dislike of Tallahassee and desire to relocate to South Florida, which is attributed to her directly rather than her fictional novel. So it's saying here, admitting the novel as substantive evidence creates a significant risk of jury getting stuck in the mud of parsing through work of fiction. Well, they're not going to admit the whole book. They're just trying to admit certain extracts of it, the ones that are incriminating. So I don't agree with the judge's ruling on this and his rationale. So yeah, there is other evidence I would dislike, but man, when you see that this was written out a couple years before, that's what really makes this something that's shocking to see. It says here, however, as the court previously ruled and stated during a hearing, inquiry into the subject matter will depend on Wendy Adelson's testimony. A party can open the door to otherwise inadmissible evidence through witness testimony. So, yeah, so if she basically says no, what the state needs to do is ask her, oh, did you like live in Tallahassee? Did you want to leave Tallahassee? What did you find out when the court denied your request to have the boys move to Miami? And remember, she said, "Oh, I was relieved." She was relieved. Yeah, she spent all this money fighting Dan, knockdown, drag out kind of stuff between them, and it was all because she was not complying with original agreed decree on visitation for the boys. She was making it difficult for Dan to have the visitation as specified in the divorce decree and custody arrangements. And then it goes on to cite the Callaway case. In the first degree murder prosecution, defendant who testified that he was ignorant about guns could be properly impeached with evidence of a prior arrest for carrying a concealed weapon. And then he cites here, in the interest of fairness and truth-seeking function of the trial, the opposing party may in turn present inadmissible evidence that qualifies, explains, or limits previously admitted evidence. Absent defendant opening the door to questions about Wendy Adelson's novel, the door remains shut. So I don't get this at all. I mean, this is like really probative stuff, and it shows actions of mom and daughter doing stuff to eliminate Dan Markel. So, and this is exactly mirroring. Keep in mind when you go back here. Remember when Wendy testified on the stand last time that Lily was representative of a friend of hers and not herself, and that was complete lie because the book actually acknowledges that this is written on in large part on her life, Wendy's life, not some other friend. So that was a made up story that she testified to in court the last time, and came across really, really horribly in doing so because it wasn't credible whatsoever. So therefore, he goes on to say, this is Judge Everett again. He cites a Robertson case from 2002. To open the door, the defendant must first offer misleading testimony or make a specific factual assertion which the state has a right to correct so the jury will not be misled. So anyway, I think this can make it harder for them to get this admitted if you have the defense not bringing up any issues about when you want to relocate or motives for relocation. The state's going to bring that up, so you don't you can't use this to impeach your own witness necessarily. But I think that's what should be allowed if she's a named unindicted co-conspirator. So I just don't quite get this ruling at all. I think he's making a bad call because I think it is totally relevant and probative, and it's not going to confuse the jury. It's not misleading on anything. It's actually showing that this hatred was longstanding. It wasn't just something that was contrived uh, in the days or months or just a year before Dan was murdered, but it'd been a long-standing, brewing, simmering thing. So going on here, therefore, the state believes the door has been opened by the defendant's cross-examination of Wendy and seeks to ask a question about the novel. She'll form the court outside the presence of the jury, and the court will make a determination at the time. This is just, I mean, wow. I'm surprised. I'm surprised the judge is saying the door is shut on this. So unless defense opens the door, that's not right, in my opinion. It's denying the state a fair trial on this point. What's unfair prejudice? You know, he never talks about, the judge never mentions how Wendy is a unindicted co-conspirator and she's the main benefactor of this murder, and having them ties with the mom and the daughter and being so entwined in what her daughter's relationship is with her husband at the time and ex-husband. So anyway, I just hope the state does a motion to reconsider this because I think that's a bad ruling. All right, let's see here. Gonna look at some other documents here. Here's a motion to preclude the testimony of Stephen Webster. That was the attorney that testified last time for Charlie's trial. And he testified how contentious the divorce was, and he agreed to take the case for Dan and fighting Wendy and doing a motion to hold her in contempt of court for violating the terms and conditions of the custody arrangements. And so here, Donna Adelson, by through her counsel, requests the court exclude the testimony of Stephen Webster. So not just a portion of it, but all of it. And they acknowledge that he previously testified in the trial and listed as a witness for this trial. And then they talk about discussion, threshold question for admissive of evidence's relevance. Webster did not become involved in the post-dissolution litigation until May 2014, filing a motion for substitute counsel on June 13th. And the order was granted on June 20th. According to his testimony in Charlie Adelson's trial, his deposition in this case on August 30th, 2024, Webster met with Mr. Markell in May of 2014, the day after the reading the pleadings he was asked to review. Webster's testimony centers on what Mr. Markell said to him about the post-dissolution proceedings, including that Mr. Markell said he heard Mrs. Adelson say stupid is on the phone. After the 26th March 2014 counter motion was filed, Mr. Webster also offers his opinion on the strength of Mr. Markell's claims and his opinion about the involvement of the Adelson family in Mr. Markell's death. His continued advocacy for the Markell family vis-a-vis participating in podcasts and interviews with media concerning Mr. Markell's love for his children and providing commentary about the case. Yeah, he did offer opinion testimony about Dan Markell's case against Wendy, because that's why he agreed to take it. And he did say that he thought it was a good case to find her in contempt of court, and that's why he agreed to take it, even though he doesn't normally practice family law. He was so motivated by Dan's frustrating efforts to see his boys and the denial like I say, the terms and conditions that he said, "Hey, I'm willing to help you out here." And he said he was so inspired by Dan Markel's fathering of his two boys and efforts to do so that he actually became a better father himself. We saw that in podcasts. So I don't know what participating in podcasts has anything to do with any of this. To the extent that the state intends to elicit from Mr. Webster statements made to him by Mr. Markel, such testimonies hearsay for which there's no exception. Murder victim statements are generally inadmissible. They're saying a Stolby state. Well, you know what? It has to do with state of mind. And so there is exceptions for that. And he can even testify as to reasons why he took the case and that he's had a strong case. And that in the motion, for example, they didn't bring this out at court when he testified last time. But in one of the footnotes in the motion there was that they mentioned that Wendy was basically unfit to hold the job as an adjunct professor, given all her lies that she made in her court filings. So that was really, I think, a real kicker, and I think why the plan to have Dan exterminated was definitely moved from serious planning to must happen now planning, because he was mentioning that she could lose her job, and also if she was found in contempt, she could lose her bar license. So this was crossing a line, and they weren't going to have any tolerance of that, and that's what the state, I believe, should be arguing strongly this next go around with Donna. And then it says here, to the extent the state intends to listen to Mr. Webster his opinion about the strength of Markel's pleadings, Webster is not an expert in family law. Even if he were a family law expert, no foundation for his opinion has been established. Absent being able to lay such a foundation, the court should prohibit him from offering an opinion about the strength of Markel's post-solution findings. Yeah, because it's very damning. It's very damning to say that, yeah, Wendy was going to be locked up and or at least found in contempt of court and had a chance of losing her license, and very easily Dan could have lost his job. Excuse me, Dan could have had Wendy lose her job. And in fact, I talked to somebody at the FSU Law School there that admitted that if Dan would have said she needs to go, she's bad news. I can't function well in this job with her working for the university, they would have fired her. So she's only a contract adjunct professor, and she only taught a few courses here and there. So she wasn't even a full-time professor at all. Okay, and then they go on to say Mr. Webster's opinion on the Adelson's involvement in Mr. Markel's death are also inadmissible. And this Martinez case cites that holding a witness opinion about the guilt or innocence of the accused is inadmissible. Okay, they're not talking about the guilt or innocence of Wendy. He was talking about the fact that the motivation, which was she could have her job on the line, and she could have the loss of her bar license, short term or permanent, whatever the case may be in Florida, or maybe nothing would happen. But he was saying that this was a serious issue that he thought she was in violation of. So that's it goes to help show there's a motive there, and so this thing should be admissible. All of Mr. Webster should be admissible. So I've not seen an order on that one. All right, next I'm going to go. Let me show these deadlines here. So defense had pre-trial motion deadlines on the 27th of June or Friday 27th of June, and they've not had any motions filings other than a motion to compel, and I'll cover that next. Discovery deadline was 27 June. Exhibit list 27 June as well. So where's the defenses? I looked at the website. I didn't see any defense exhibit or witness list. That's a pretty serious thing here to not meet the deadline. You got a murder case coming up. It's due the 19th, and you haven't submitted your exhibit list. So maybe the clerk's office is behind the ball here, so I'm not gonna say for sure what's going on, but it just looks bad that, we don't have the witness list. So we've not seen, but we also haven't seen the state witness list as well. Alright, let me see here. There's a friend of Wendy named Sarah Youssef. Defendant had motion in limine to keep her from testifying as well. And this one, I think, was should also be denied by the judge. And they had a relationship before for a number of years before the murder, and then after the murder, there was still some contact. They were friends for about 13 years, and she gives a description. I have not seen the transcript, but apparently she had a deposition, and she did go to a Wendy's eldest son birthday party in 2014 at Harvey and Donna's condo. And at this party, she overheard Donna saying, "They're talking about him like he was a beloved professor, but you know something? He was a jerk." And she thought that that was abnormal because Dan had just died. In most cultures, you don't speak ill about the dead. So she's talking about her grandson's father that way. He was a jerk at the kid's birthday party, right? Maybe the kids overheard that. So I think she's probably talking bad about Dan Markel even after he was murdered right in front of the kids. In Sarah's opinion, Donna's statement conveyed an outsized and inappropriate anger, considering he, Dan, would never bother anyone again. And then it said, beyond that statement, Sarah had no other testimony related to Donna Adelson that she could offer. No, but she did talk about some other stuff about Wendy, that Wendy was worried about she's getting arrested or something like that. I remember seeing that somewhere, but I don't have that in front of me right now. And she did mention that when asked if she came to the conclusion that Donna was guilty or the Adelsons or in general are guilty of doing something, Sarah thought they were guilty of conspiring to murder Dan Markel. And she clarified it was not all the Adelsons, but that Donna, Harvey, and Donna, Charlie, and Wendy were guilty of conspiracy to commit murder and soliciting someone to kill Dan. She talked about the last trial. She saw Phil Markel's victim impact statement and it brought her to tears. She explained the amount of time he talked about grandparent alienation, not having a meaningful relationship with the children, made her feel really awful. Because of this, Sarah contacted Markel's attorney and provided him with the information that she had about the grandparent visitation legislation. And then Sarah said nothing happened for a couple months, but then Markel's attorney contacted her and told her he was giving her name to the prosecutor, Georgia Kaufman. She said she did this because she wanted to help Markel. So yeah, that's very honorable of her to do that. And so down here below at the bottom, paragraph 22, the defense is objecting, saying the only thing that she can talk about is Don Adelson's making a comment about Dan Markel being a jerk. So they're saying that she has no other admissible testimony that she could offer about Don Adelson. While this statement may be admissible, the rest of Ms. Youssef's anticipated testimony, including her opinion concerning Ms. Adelson's guilt, would be inadmissible at trial. So they're also sort of admitting here, while the statement may be admissible, so that's a good sign that they realize they got a really weak argument. Not always do they admit that they have a weak argument. Here they do. And they always throw this scare language in here to testify to allow her to testify concerning opinion. Her opinion on what? Would be grounds for mistrial and reversible error as a witness opinion about guilt or innocence accused of inadmissible. Prosecutor is not that stupid to do something like that. So, and they talk about hearsay and admissibility, and they're not going to bring in all the inadmissible stuff about how she felt sorry for Phil Markel unless the defense opened the door. So, anyways, admission by a party opponent. So that's anything Donna says is admissible. So that should be denied as well. We'll see what the judge does. Right, and then I'm looking for. Okay, that was. Oh, sorry, that's the same one. So one of the things that I haven't seen is there any motions filed by the defense? When is those hearings going to be? When are the defense hearings going to be on this? So there's like I said, motion to compel because they're trying to get the raw computer data. Here we go. Okay, this defendant's second unopposed motion to compel discovery. As this court is aware, the current defense team was retained after the court disqualified prior counsel. To avoid the taint of the conflict found by the court, the current defense team obtained a completely new set of discovery from the state. Unfortunately, this also meant we had to rely rather than being able to trust and verify the state provided us everything provided to prior counsel. Since November of 24, the undersigned has been requesting raw, unredacted emails and cellular phone records via email, phone conversations, and text messages with the state, as well as with Sergeant Corbett. He's with the Tallahassee Police Department. The state has repeatedly stated those materials had been provided during an April 28th deposition of Investigator Newland, who works for the state attorney's office. We learned that that was false with respect to our client's emails. As was addressed during the April 8th teleconference between counsel, both parties in the court, we were told not until that day that a filter team had been utilized for the search warrants executed on our own client's email accounts and that the raw data was being stored at the state's evidence locker. The court agreed that we were entitled to unfiltered search warrant returns, and the state provided those materials to us. And under 6, it says under April 21st, under expedited motion to continue trial, the undersigned has complained that the raw redacted emails have been withheld until provided on April 10th, and the volume of data necessitated a continuance. The 21 April 25 motion also referenced cellular phone extractions. The state represented in their court filings and during the April 30th hearing that the raw unredacted emails have been provided. And they're saying again, the state's reps to the undersigned in the court are false. The undersigned provided a forensic data expert with the materials that the state identified as raw unredacted emails from cellular devices. Upon receipt, the expert advised the materials were not as represented by the state. And they go here to say what the expert is explaining to them. The produced data sets are reports taken from mobile device extractions and warrant returns produced by digital forensic tools in a couple formats, but primarily in what is called a Cellbrite proprietary UFDR report. Although we can use the data in these reports to assist our analysis, we must always keep in mind that these reports are automated interpretations of the raw electronic data and are not the actual extractions or full warrant returns themselves. Additionally, these reports can contain targeted results. That is, they can omit categories of information both because the person creating the report selected to omit data and or because the tool being used to create the report was not being programmed to fully understand the data. Thus, absent an unusual situation, it's always my recommendation to request the actual extractions, and I would request we do that here. He advised to use the fine language to the request of the raw data, and then he lists the different iPhones and also an Apple device with Charlie's Apple ID of Charlie Adelson at Gmail. And then they just clarify they're not seeking reports such as those produced by Cellbrite or our forensics tools kit. So they want the actual raw data, not something that was compiled by some other analytical product. And they're saying here that thus, as a filing of this motion, the state has not provided the defense with the raw downloads of cellular devices seized from Ms. Adelson and her husband, from the extraction done on Wendy's phone back in 2014, or Charlie Adelson's iCloud obtained in April 2016. As a result, on June 11th, the undersigned corresponded with the state investigator Newland to find out from who to request the raw unredacted data. He responded he would look into this and identify from whom to obtain the materials. Having received no response, the undersigned sent an email to the state requesting the raw unredacted data on June 17th. On June 18th, the state advised they were speaking with state's experts, and on June 24th, the undersigned again followed up requesting the materials. On June 25th, the state advised Sergeant Corbett had the data, and the undersigned could obtain it directly from him, which sounds really weird because prosecutors should always want to be the gatekeeper of any information. They should not be wanting any of the investigators to be dealing with directly to defense counsel and giving them information. That's the way normal prosecutor's office work anyway. The undersigned then emailed Sergeant Corbett asking when the data could be picked up. And then on the next day, the undersigned followed up, and Newland responded that Assistant State Attorney Eddie Evans and Sarah Dugan were consulting. Ms. Dugan were responding to the email. As a result, the undersigned called Newland to ascertain the reasons for the delay. Anyway, it sounds like they just were having trouble getting anyone from the state to really lock it down and give them a straight answer. And then in response to this email, Ms. Dugan responded, asserting for the first time that the state used a filter team for the devices. The defense would need a court order to obtain the raw unredacted files and would have to use a filter team. As the court had already directed the state to provide defense with our own client's raw unredacted emails, it makes no sense to require a filter team. For our client's cellular phone extractions, additionally, during the attempt to depose Newland, it was disclosed that no filter team had been used for the devices belonging to our client's husband, thus asserting the defense needs a filter team for his devices, imposing an unnecessary undue burden on the defense. With respect to extraction of Wendy Adelson's phone and Charlie Adelson's iCloud warrant response, there is no evidence that a filter team was used in 2014 or 16. And they're saying that thus it's evident the state failed to use a filter team when they conducted extractions of those materials and instead are imposing the unnecessary hurdle on the defense and analysis of the raw data. After further pressing, though, the state relented with respect to Harvey Adelson's devices, Charlie Adelson's iCloud, and Wendy Adelson's device. Although the state is claiming a full extraction was not performed on Wendy Adelson's device and the raw data does not exist, however, they maintain a court order is necessary for the release of the raw unredacted extractions of Ms. Adelson's device. A copy of the email chain is attached and incorporated. So I don't know why they need to have a court order for this kind of information, unless there's some kind of HIPAA type things they're concerned about. And they cite some laws saying the prosecutors are imputed with constructive knowledge and possession of evidence. They complain about the evidence should not come in so late, it cannot be used effectively. So they again complained about the state not providing the information they said they had. And they're seeking the court intervention, request the state be ordered to provide the defense with a raw and redacted cellular phone extraction so they can be fully analyzed by an independent expert. So that's gone on for a couple. Let's see, when did that start? Here we got some emails. Sarah Dugan to the defense team. Let me back up here. So this is sort of the history of it here. Sent from Zellman. He's not asking for cell right data. Those are the things that they're asking for that he mentioned in the motion that his forensic expert told him to ask for. And then Chris Corbett responds. So Corbett's saying we do have the raw extractions. And then, but Sarah Dugan, earlier than that, said, it's my understanding we had to use a filter team because of confidential information in many of these extractions. Okay, well, why does it my understanding? So I think you will need to get, why don't they know this? That's really odd. The prosecutor thinks they had a filter team and thinks you'll have to get a court order. Yeah, why? That is weird. Why would the state require a filter team for Donna's own phone and devices? There should be nothing filtered at all having to do with Donna's. And then 26 June 404. Sarah Dugan saying, I don't believe we have the raw data for Wendy's phone. That's where your client's device filter team was used as my understanding. Yeah, there's communication with a former counsel on the device. Okay, so that maybe is why, if it had to do with interception of communications and if Rashmam had a conflict, so that would make sense and the filter team was in place. But why would you say, I don't believe in my understanding? It just seems like something they should know. They go to trial next month. They should know exactly what information they have, what format. And then you have Zellman here saying that does not answer my questions. I'll file a motion to compel. He's asking if they'll oppose it. And then Jason Newland's clarifying it then, saying Harvey's phone and Charlie's iCloud did not have a review team. Charlie's iCloud had the HIPAA concerns. Donna's phone had an email, had a review team, specifically the phone we took off her person at the airport. Because they never took her phone back in 2016 or 2014 or any time before that. I do not believe we have the raw data from Wendy's phone, and the extraction of her phone was not a full extraction. Okay. He says, I do not believe. Why wouldn't they know that for sure? Our position that you would just need a court order for the extractions that a filter team were used, which appears to be just honest extractions. So I think that they're not going to oppose this, and I think the filter is having. My understanding is it's probably then due to the conflict of interest with Rashmam. See what a headache this whole thing with Rashmam and its conflict is. It just gums everything up, even to this day. It's like it never goes away. All right, the two, you're loving that this is going to trial next month. Let's hope it goes to trial next month. You may see requests by the defense to try to delay it, saying we're just not ready, Your Honor. We just can't do this. But I think they ought to get it that this judge is not gonna extend it out again. All right, let me do a final review here to see. I can hear the fireworks going off in the background. I don't know if you all can hear that. Right, here is a affidavit from a local attorney there. He's a longtime prosecutor. He's a prosecutor in the 70s. So this guy's like at least 75 years old. So this is a defendant's notice of filing supplemental affidavit in support of motion for change of venue, filed on July 2nd. So here's a Anthony Bajowski, something like that is how you pronounce it. Saying he's practiced law in Tallahassee for more than 50 years. Large portion has been criminal trial work with his prosecuting defense attorney. He's represented individuals charged in both state and federal court, ranging from misdemeanors to first degree murder. He talks about how he reads the Tallahassee Democrat and other newspapers on a daily basis and frequently talks to others in the community concerning all types of cases of public interest. Many people talk with him about his endpoint and viewpoints on different cases. And he specifically mentions the murder of Dan Markell and the co-conspirators to include Charlie Adelson's and now the present case with Donna Adelson have all been discussed in the community with great interest. He's very much aware that just about anyone in Leon County area that reads the newspaper, watches local news, has watched and discussed the case with each other. Notice he talks about the local news, watching local news or reading the local newspaper. You know what? There's a large portion of this population now there that does not do that. Younger folks, younger generations, they don't use those sources. And then he goes on to say that the amount of news coverage, especially the repeated news coverage of this case for the past few years, has rendered nearly impossible for any member of this community that is selected as a juror to sit with, to set aside their prior knowledge of the case and to only consider evidence submitted during a trial. Just because they have prior knowledge doesn't mean you're not able to be seated as a jury and only consider the evidence submitted during trial. Well, that wasn't a problem last time for Charlie's case, and that won't be a problem this time. And then he goes on to say, based on my lengthy practice and residence in Leon County, as well as the breadth of knowledge possessed by the case by members of the community, I do not believe a Leon County juror can be impartial in this case. If potential jurors were truthful, it would be impossible to seat an impartial jury. That's a pretty bold, outlandish comment to make. Like, he knows what these jurors are going to say when they come in there. Like, they for sure know it. They all for sure. Every single juror that they bring in there can say, yep, I know about the Charlie Adelson case, and I'll keep an open mind. I haven't formed a fixed opinion about his guilt. All those kind of people could be seated as jurors. So mere knowledge of the allegations is not enough of a reason to kick somebody off. So for him to make this kind of a outrageous statement is really bizarre. And so he used to be a state attorney office chief there, and so I believe he's maybe the supervisor for Fulford back when she used to work at the state attorney's office. So maybe that's just more like a professional courtesy to help her out. Because otherwise, what he's saying here is just really over the top. Like, he really knows what everybody thinks there in the community. It's really pretty weak. I think that was it for them. The different motions and orders. Let me check here a second. So if you guys have any questions, put red emojis for your questions, and I'll answer your questions, or do my best to attempt to do so. I think what I'll do next is let's just go in and look at. Okay, so here we got this is on Leon County's website. Looked up Donna Sue Adelson. Here's all the PDFs you can see, all the filings done. As you go towards the bottom, you get the more recent one. Here you now we're starting to go into 2025. Now we're into May of 25. We've already seen the hearing here, June 13th. There's the two motions in limine we talked about tonight. This was an order granting the defendant's unopposed motion, allowing expert. That was having to do with the change of venue request by the defense. Court appearance notice by jail. That was for Donna's court appearance. She was not going to be transported to the courtroom. Case management conference, June 11th. Here's a motion for changing a venue. They want to move the court to a different city. The judge reserves a ruling. That's based on what the jurors that are being screened come back and say. Here is, yeah, so the deadline was the 27th. I'm looking here. There's not another extension granted. We already talked about the notice of depositions. They wanted to redepose folks after the second investigation into Donna's behavior from the Leon County Jail, trying to interfere with folks that were going to testify. We already talked about this tonight, the motion to compel discovery. So if you look here, it has a jury trial. The still on the 19th. At 8:30. But there's no other motions hearing set at this time, so there'll probably be some other motions filed. I just think based on these guys, filing so many motions, I just think they're going to file some more motions. They'll have to have something before trial. Normally, you have stuff developed before trial, within a couple weeks before trial. So I anticipate there'll be another motions hearing for this. So one second here, I want to check something else. There's something on Reddit I want to cover here. I guess it gives key extracts of Sarah Youssef's deposition. Sarah had talked about how she initially had watched all the trials with Charlie, Katie, and Sigfredo. She says she developed her opinion that Wendy was involved with a hit for hire along with her family. She did initially believe Wendy had nothing to do with it, but her suspicions mounted after observing Wendy's behavior and when more evidence came out publicly. Already talked about. She said that Wendy was crass about Dan's murder. She would say something along the lines that Danny got whacked. She thought it was odd as most people respect the dead. Wendy led Sarah on to believe that she was in communication with the police about the status of Dan's murder. When Sarah asked for an update on the case about a year later, Wendy gave these options as to the suspect. A student Dan had, a case Dan was working on in New York, which was I guess a death penalty case, as I recall, and the ex-husband of Dan's girlfriend, Amy Adler, in New York. Sarah learned that this was not true. Wendy was not in contact with the police after Sarah ended her relationship with her. At some time following the murder, a year later, Sarah asked Wendy for an update on the status, which Wendy replied, "You know, Sarah, murders typically get resolved within 48 hours." That's a really odd comment to make. Sarah felt this was an effort by Wendy to get her to stop asking about the case. Sarah was a senior lawyer at this time and had a lot of homicide cases. After the first two arrests happened in 2016, which would be Katie McManaman and Sigfredo, Sarah stayed at Wendy's place as she was traveling for work. While getting ready for bed, Wendy said, "Poor Charlie is having panic attacks," to which Sarah asked, "Wendy, is believing in Charlie's innocence a prerequisite to his friendship?" And Wendy replied, "No." At the first probable cause, After the first probable cause were released publicly implicating Charlie and Donna, Wendy was talking to Sarah and said, "What if my crazy brother hired a hitman?" To which Sarah responded, "That's his problem, not yours." Wendy asked Sarah to give a statement to defend her, and Sarah said no because her statement won't help. And then goes on to talk about how Sarah was moved by Dan Markel's father's testimony and felt compelled to reach out. So we know about the rest of that. So that's, again, seems very odd behavior of these Florida Adelsons. That's why I think Rob Adelson, the honorable doctor son, eldest son of Harvey and Donna, would be critical for the prosecution case next month because he can testify as to the strange comments and behavior of his family in Florida once he heard about the murder of Dan Markel. So now I'm going to go ahead and look at some of your all's questions. If you have any, go ahead, like I say, with the red emoji. Random, you're saying, why would anyone want to continue to postpone the trial for so long? It seems to drag out the inevitable. I think your defense lawyers just have a lot of information to go through, and they would prefer to have time to regroup. I don't know why they couldn't have the amount of time and effort on this case to go through everything by now. Granted, there was like 100,000 emails, but most of those are probably not even relevant. I think there's 23 emails that are relevant. So, but that's generally defense strategy. The longer you can delay a case, the better you have a chance for things going wrong. Maybe a key witness will become unavailable, for example. Yeah, Donna's going to get a fair trial here. There's plenty of people that Don't know about the case there in Tallahassee. Paul M. Do I envision more delays in Donna's trial? I don't. I think the judge has so much against that. I think the defense may ask for it once more, but I think a lot of these motions are weak. Other than the fact that they were asking for compel raw data, I think that's legitimate. I'm surprised the state isn't more on the ball with that. Mike, you're saying they should arrest Wendy, take the boys to state custody, and use that as leverage to get a confession. Well, she already has a lawyer on the case, so they cannot talk to Wendy. They know she has representation, so they can't ask her a single question about this case, other than when she's called as a witness to testify, and then she's given that state immunity that's by statute. It's not any kind of plea bargain, but it's by statute. If somebody's subpoenaed by the state, they're automatically conferred that limited use immunity, but it's not a license to lie. Sir Tedrick Walker, how long do you think Donna's trial will last? I think it's going to go probably a little bit longer than Charlie's. These attorneys generally, I think, combined don't get through stuff as quick as Rashbaum did. And so I think they'll have more objections to deal with, more sidebars and that kind of thing. So I think it's going to be, I think Charlie's was what, 11 days? I think this one will probably be 2 weeks at least. I think the jury selection can be done in 3 days. So um, sorry, didn't mean to post that. John Smith, do you think they'll arrest Wendy after she testifies in Donna's trial? I think if they don't arrest her by the end of the year, the calendar year here, you got to wonder what the heck's going on. Why have they waited this long? Are they ever going to do this? It's really, it's really astounding that they weren't ready to arrest Donna right away. They had to scramble to get the arrest warrant prepared because they knew they got the tip that she was leaving out that night with Harvey to flee the country for good. And they didn't have that ready to go. So it's like they were surprised at Charlie's conviction or something. It doesn't make any sense. Beach Homie, you're saying they don't have much time left to sift through raw data at this stage. Yeah, maybe they'll say their expert doesn't have time to sift through it all, so they can't be prepared, so they can't be effective. So we need another delay judge. But I think the firmness of this judge is well known. He's not a judge you can push around. Carrie Sue, yes, I do think Donna will testify. She thinks she's a good actress, and I think she's going to try to put on the performance of her lifetime, as she told her daughter Wendy to do so. And like you're saying, Wendy would have been arrested by now. They need someone to roll on her. No, they don't. That's your opinion. There's enough evidence out there. Charlie, Donna, and Harvey, and Wendy was careful about any texts, emails, etc. She left a lot of um, evidence out there. It's just not in the text and email format. Although we did have a text. One of the texts. How was she careful about a text when she asked if Dan was what his whereabouts were going to be in relation to the kids on the the date right around those days he was going to be murdered. She sent that out 2 weeks before he was murdered. So that's very incriminating. So I would say that's a very, very reckless and indicative of involvement. Was she very careful about going to the murder scene a little over an hour after it happened? Was that careful? No. Looks like a sign of desperation. How about the fact that she strung along Jeff Lacasse for so long and was so curious about wanting to know when he was leaving town? And if he was leaving town, that's after they had already decided to break up. He actually couldn't take this yo-yo effect on him. What about the cancellation of the trip to California to see his parents? And she was all worried about whether they're going to be back in time for the custody handoff on the 18th of July. Oh, coincidentally, that happened to be the date that the hit occurred. So there's all these coincidences, and so anyway, no, there's so many indicators there. I would just say you haven't studied the case long enough in detail. You need to spend a lot more time on it. RC, is there any chance Markel's asked the state to wait for the rest of Wendy given the kids' ages? I would say that's 0% chance because they would have better access to the kids. So why would they want someone that was involved in the killing of their son to have extra time with their grandkids? And this person, Wendy, is denying most meaningful visitation with those same grandparents. So I would say that's zero. And I don't know any prosecutors that do that. Oh, Rama, do I think Wendy will have a different story again? And Jorah will say something snippy to her again about not being truthful. That had to do with when they asked Wendy. I think you're referring to when Georgia knew that she had Wendy in a lie having to do with dating other men, and she said no. But then I think that's when Georgia said, "Are you sure about that? Because we have your Facebook records and something else." Um, and then you saw a little bit twist in Wendy's testimony. So I think there'll be some more twists and turns. She's told a different story every time she's been in that court. Almost anything of substance, there's evidence to contradict what she says. She doesn't come across credible at all. Sharma Lily, the bump is what did Donna in. She didn't even try to fake it. Yeah, and Charlie keep asking questions about what that bump was about. Really, really help sink him, and is going to sink her. A Obsidian, you think Donna's defense is generally unprepared, may not even be capable. I think they're up to their eyeballs and maybe in over their head. You don't have a chance of winning this case, so they got their work cut out for them. In a way, the pressure's off. I think the pressure is much more on a defense attorney when you know your client's innocent. Assuming you have a conscience as a defense attorney, that is. But if you don't have a conscience, then I guess you don't want to care if your client's innocent or not. It's not going to affect you if an innocent person gets convicted. But you think you'd sleep less if you had an innocent client be convicted. Can't look Cass. You're saying Wendy doesn't remember the banana bread. Yeah, the banana bread that she's testified to that Donna gave to Dan Markel, right? When they're in that all that fighting in court. And yet she couldn't remember what they gave Charlie for his birthday, for his 70th birthday present. So what selective memory? Tim Ellis, that's why I don't think that any state would ever delay prosecuting a solo parent for the sake of the children. I've never seen that, never heard of it. I think that's ridiculous. Otherwise, that's an incentive to kill for one parent to kill the other. If you got a 1-year-old, go ahead and kill your parent. If you don't get along, you're going to fight you on custody because the state will allow you to keep and then raise that kid till they're 18. Yeah, I think the boys now are 14 to 15. So Charlie's going to be called in rebuttal. That's what I said from the get-go. Then I heard the state arguing that as well in some kind of motions hearing that Charlie was going to be only called in rebuttal in case Donna tries to distance herself from when she heard about the so-called extortion effort that Charlie was talking about. So they want to have Charlie there in case she gets on the stand and denies that she ever knew anything about this extortion effort. Yeah. John Smith. Maybe Donna can tell going to Vietnam story for rest and relaxation, it being easier to come back if charges were filed. Yeah, I mean that's a good way to clear your head, right? She said she was so shocked and upset with what happened to Charlie that she just need to get out of the country and go clear her head. A non-extradition country. So she could fly back faster without being arrested. Yeah, right. Yeah, I'll tell you one thing that's Jeffrey Jordan, you guys asking what would be the trigger for Wendy's arrest? Probably some the state attorney getting a backbone will probably be the main trigger because the evidence is there. I just don't get it. And if they don't arrest her, like I say, within this calendar year, assuming Donna goes to trial in September, August, and it's concluded in September, then they're just not tenacious prosecutors in my book. Yeah, because if you stop to think about it, has anybody complained about the prosecution dragging their feet on this? Has anybody complained? Has anybody complained while Rashomon was allowed to represent Donna for that whole year leading up to her trial? I was constantly complaining, saying that the prosecution, the judge, defense counsel, this is bad. It's real bad. This should not be going on. And lo and behold, what happened? It blew up in the prosecution's face. So anyway, I just call it like it is, folks. I'm not trying to poke at anything other than what's unjust about this situation. So I'm trying to be an advocate for this case of the murder case against Dan Markel. The way he was murdered, I think justice needs to come forward and not be timid and shy, gun shy, and the dragging of the feet to get these cases to trial is beyond belief. Morama, yeah, we got the plans are in the work. John's going to be there, I think, virtually the entire trial, and Leslie and I are talking about going in the last day, maybe the closing argument, last day or two. That's our intent anyway. So we're not going to get tickets in advance. At least Leslie and I aren't, but John, he can fly anytime being a pilot. Yeah, I do think that I've not talked about this before, but in detail, and I'm not going to cover the appellate ruling for Kitty McBannel, but I think her appeal being denied, it was like a joke of an appeal. It mostly had to do with Wendy Adelson and how Wendy was trying to invoke the fifth at her deposition and at trial, issues involving Wendy. So it was just basically a worthless appeal. And so I think that's going to embolden her to come forward, maybe be a little bit stronger of a witness. So, but I expect Katie McBanois to testify again because that's her only shot at getting something less than life without parole, is to be a cooperative witness and help expose the folks that hired her. Oh yeah, the broken TV. Yeah, the broken TV is going to be talked about. Remember the code? The TV was the code. Carol Tell, will Charlie Adelson be able to watch his mom's trial in prison? No, he's going to be down there. So I think that most of that time, that 2 weeks of this trial, I think he's going to be down there in a neighboring county being held until they decide if and when they need him. Mike H, are they working with Donna to get a confession? Why it's planned delays? I don't think the defense are maybe trying to work that hard to get her to cut a deal, but if she was smart, she'd cut a deal like Kohlberger did. Why not cut a deal? Try to get something like some kind of manslaughter. Do a manslaughter conviction or something. Get her 5-10 years or something like that. And she at least has something to look forward to. Maybe getting out while she's still alive. Maybe she's going to get out at 85, 90. I think if she's going to have to roll over on Wendy. Maybe they could cut a deal and have Harvey not prosecuted, and they circle the wagons and go after Wendy. Charlie would have to maybe help out as well. Maybe they have to have a joint deal. Yeah, we'll offer you five or 10 if you also have your son cooperate. But Charlie's appeal is still pending, so I think he's not going to flip until he realizes it's dead in the water as well. But because of the conflict of counsel issue, which is not really raised on his lawyer's appeal this time, this is a footnote. So unless they have conflict of interest as the appeal matter, I don't see Charlie's appeal being granted. Agent 47, you're saying Donna will never plead out. Never. No, I think she's thinking she can control that courtroom, just like Charlie thought he could control the courtroom. I think he's just like his mom in that regard. Beach Mom, ineffective assistance counsel goes out the window when the same lawyer is filing your appeal. No, that's not what happened. Roshbaum was Charlie's lawyer, right, at the trial level, and on appeal, he has Ufferman is doing his appeal. So those are two different lawyers, and he actually said that he was going to file ineffective assistance of counsel against Roshbaum, but that whole conflict thing is not materialized yet on appeal. I'm not sure why that's the case. Becky Ireland, you're saying nobody thinks that Donna's smart enough to go for a plea. Yeah, she doesn't want to accept any responsibility. So she's messing with putting interference out there, apparently against other witnesses, including her son Rob, trying to intimidate them so they don't testify. Is what the gist of what we're hearing is. So yeah, that doesn't sound like somebody that's want to cut a deal and have a chance of not dying in prison. A little misread. I don't think there's gonna be a deal on the table. I don't think Donna's even in that frame of mind to accept any responsibility. Yeah. Agent 47, I think yeah, Charlie will go for broke, and he will be broke at the end. All these attorneys' fees and stuff, it's gonna eat up most all their funds. Morama, I think if you get there soon enough, you'll be able to get in. There's enough room to get into Charlie's. I think Donna's getting more coverage now, maybe in the national news, especially since Koberger's pled out. Yeah, Bubsy, Katie's refusal to take a deal was unbelievable. Unbelievable. Yeah, and I can't believe attorneys. She had 3 attorneys and they couldn't talk her into cutting a deal to get her out of jail right away. And she could have seen her young children. So instead, she's serving life without parole along with her children's father, life without parole because they're too stupid to cut a deal and go state's evidence. And now she does it after she's convicted. Danielle X. Yeah, I really want Dr. Rob Adelson to testify because I think he's so credible and I think he's going to shed some interesting light on Donna and what comments she made. Yeah, Becky, they're going to have Charlie transported. Regardless, he tells him he's not going to testify in his appellate counsel. Don't tells him not to. Things can always change. Oh, you were talking about Tara Kawaso listed on Catherine M's appeal. Okay. Yeah, so ineffective. Attorney's not going to claim ineffective if they're representing this client on appeal. So the same lawyer at the trial level is also appellate lawyer. Yeah, you're not going to have an ineffective. At least it'd be extremely rare for a client or a lawyer to say that they were ineffective and use that as a basis for the appeal. So how many of y'all are just new to this case? I'm just curious. If you're new on this case in the last month or two, can you just maybe type in something like new? Yeah, okay. I guess some of that I can go by names. So yeah, Arca's Chicken Gun. Yeah, I remember you from following Kieran Reed. Dr. Latina, you're saying you're old on the case. Sir Cheddar Walker, I remember your name. House long. Yeah, at least your name is new from the Karen Reed case. Oh yeah, and this that dreaded infamous ceiling fan. Georgia Bolt Girl, you've been following this since it happened, 30 minutes away. So yeah, that's about Tallahassee about what, 20 miles from the Georgia border? Amazingly true. Wendy caused all this chaos and walks away free. So sad. It's not over yet. It's not over yet. But think about how things have changed just in the last 2.5 years. When I first got in this case, there was not really anybody talking about indicators of Wendy's involvement. So, well, Liz, you were in following this case from the beginning because you're on vacation in Tallahassee that day. You're talking about the day of the murder? Ruben, Ruben, you're saying you think they intend to prosecute Wendy next? How could you not? Okay, Liz, you're saying yes. Okay, wow. Clues beekeeping. You're saying jurors from the first trial were convinced Wendy was in on it, and then nobody was talking about her involvement. Teresa Dirksmeyer, you're saying MSP might allow Walsh to walk. I've not been watching that at all, but I do want to cover the trial, so I don't plan covering any of the hearings that are going on right now. But once the trial starts, I want to do some coverage on that. Enos, yes, they'll have to extradite her from Texas. She could always waive extradition, but yeah, an extradition process would happen unless they arrest her there after she testifies in her mom's trial. Then they wouldn't need an extradition because she's already in the state. Bubsy, you're saying it's not George's decision regarding charging Wendy, it's the DA's. Yeah, ultimately he's responsible. I agree with that. Chef Jordan, could Katie have made a deal testifying Wendy's trial to nail her and then get a resentence? No, you don't get you don't get a guarantee to resentence. I think the way it works in Florida is just like it works in the feds. They can do a motion, the state can do a motion to have the court reconsider the sentence based on substantial cooperation to um, to help the prosecution of Donna. She's already helped the prosecution of Charlie. So, and if she helps the prosecution against Wendy, she can further reduce her sentence. Cam Lacasse, you seem to be the only one on top of this case. Well, there's just so many bad statements being given about the case by lawyers that don't do any criminal defense work, and then even ones that do criminal defense work. They have conflicts that you may not know about that I perceive are conflicts. So you don't really get just a straight truth on it. And that's one of the reasons my brother was able to convince me to overcome my aversion to this kind of format of speaking publicly. But it's worked out pretty good. I'm getting more used to it, but never totally liking having to go in front of a camera. Food is love. Thanks for modding tonight. You're saying Donna's own lawyer said the book was not an easy read. Yeah, it's not. That's a good way to say it. It's a terrible read. Evan, you're saying you think the case against Brian Walsh is going to get tossed because of botched Massachusetts State Police work? I've been following that, so I can't comment. But yeah, if you got a fair judge, that sounds like there would be some evidence suppressed. They just don't follow the normal procedures up there. Morama, yeah, the jailhouse calls are tedious. Charlie talks for hours and hours every day with his mom and dad, mostly his mom, and then repeats everything he hates Tallahassee. Yeah, and he's also very mad at Wendy for driving by at the house on Trescott. Thanks, Pepsi. I didn't create the YouTube channel. My brother did. Stand by. Harley D, you've been on the case for 6 years. Linda Mon, yeah, she drove by Trescott in the LCO8. Yep. What are the odds? What are the odds? A place completely out of the way. And you want to drive by there because you want to go get some alcohol for a party? That's not a coincidence. Just like Charlie says, it's not a coincidence. Hey, Dr. Latina, I understand you're a doctor in South America or something. Thanks for your support, but as I've told people, please do not. I don't ask for any money. I've never asked for a sub or money or likes or anything like that. It's not important. But anyway, that's very kind of you. Yeah, I had the super chats, that kind of stuff turned off, but then YouTube started. It's like they penalized me, and so that's why I turned it back on, but I didn't tell anybody that. So I guess you found that it's turned back on. So I guess if I turn them off, then YouTube doesn't like the fact that I'm denying the opportunity to make some money. So even though I wasn't getting much for super chats, because like I say, I tell people don't give me any money. We don't need any money, but that's very sweet of you. But like I say, I hope you all, if you don't have YouTube Premium, you buy that. So if you're looking on this During live streams, you don't have any ads. So if you're missing this live and you're looking at it on rewatch, replay, whatever they call it, then you'll see ads pop up if you don't have the YouTube Premium. So just make sure you have YouTube Premium because these ads, that's the only way YouTube makes money. So you can't avoid it other than the fact, like I say, go on YouTube Premium. So yeah, the Bullet Bourbon. Yeah, the Bullet Bourbon, Lindemon, the Irony, and also the T-shirt. Yes, for Ted Work, Charlie says 1 in a million chance she drives by the crime scene a little over an hour after the shooting. Oh, I think that's one thing she did on her own because she was just flustered with her. She didn't trust her brother to have some criminal misfits from Miami come up and get the job done. Thanks, Little Miss Red Velvet. No, nothing to help, I guess. Let's see. You're saying too many coincidences. Wendy in on it, no doubt about it. Yeah, it's just to me, it's just very, very disturbing that they've not done enough on these Adelsons, Florida Adelsons, as of yet. They at least scrambled, like I say, to get Donna arrested right as she's fleeing the country. But what if they wouldn't have gotten that tip? Wendy and Harvey would have been out of the country, and then they probably wouldn't have had the courage and guts to go after Wendy if her mom and dad are out of the country. So that's how this is basically by a tip on the day of her leaving. It wasn't for that tip, we'd never have any other Adelson prosecuted probably. So they're just not very aggressive down there on this case. Well, why is Jack Campbell not more aggressive on this case? Tinfoil hat, you're saying YouTube Premium is worth absolutely. I cannot stand ads. So maybe I'll do. One thing I haven't done is like Wendy's interview with Detective Isom the day of the murder. So maybe that's something I'll do down the road. I have a renewed list of indicators. Maybe I'll do that as well. Cover 5 of 10 an episode. A little misread. That's good. You're going to see a trial there in the UK at your local courts. Good. The public should be involved in what's going on with justice here in your location, anywhere in the world. Yeah, you can't believe the crazy stuff going on. You go to a courtroom and you're going to see lying testimony. You're going to see terrible attorneys. You may see some really good ones too. You may see some really good judges. You may see some really bad judges. So, MG, you're saying keep the heat on Wendy. Bubsy, you think I should do that interview as well? Sally, you agree? Danielle X, it's very cringy and painful to watch. Yeah, Teresa, I do plan on covering that case. And also, you can see how justice can be impeded on cases because judges limit stuff, judges keep stuff out that should be relevant. Just like I'm disappointed in Judge Everett with his ruling so far on this predictive type book that Wendy wrote. The judge sort of declared it cumulative and unduly prejudicial, but he doesn't explain how. He never explains why it is. Yeah, happy 4th, everybody. It's 11:39 here Central Time. Yeah, people talk about me not moving much on the screen. I guess I just have this laser focus. You guys think the screen froze up or something? It's sort of an eye strain to have to look at the comments because it's like the distance is there. Because if I move them any closer, then I I would have that it would be blocking me. The monitor would be blocking the camera, so it's a little bit more of an eye strain. And I'm waiting on my new glasses to get here as well, so that'll help out a little. But Mike H, you're saying Wendy's in a catch 22 right now. Can't run, can't say anything. Yeah, they also have a family type plan on YouTube Premium where you can have up to 6 people on the account. Chantel, it's been 11 years. If you still think they'll bring charges against Wendy, why? Well, because the evidence is there. That's why. Look how long it taken to go after Charlie and Donna. They should have tried at least Charlie and Donna together. And why not add Wendy? Why not add Harvey? So I said that the evidence against Charlie was a slam dunk. It's almost as strong against Donna at the time, and it's even as strong as Charlie's now that we know she's trying to flee the country. Different statements she's given. So she's going down. Wendy's got so many indicators that even go back years before Dan was murdered. From writing the book to the way she acted in the days, months leading up to the day of the murder, as well as how she acted after the murder. Yeah, why can't why can't Wendy ever tell the truth about going to the crime scene? Story keeps changing. She keeps on backing up further and further away from the house on Trescott where Dan was murdered at. And Georgia Boat Girl, yeah, they have more evidence against Wendy than they're even telling us about. Daniel actually had gone at least a mile down Trescott from Centerville, I think. Yeah, it seems like it's close to a mile. Close to a mile. I've driven down that, and it seemed like I can't remember the exact distance, but seemed like it was at least a mile. I think it might even been further than that. Maybe it was 1.8 mile or something like that. It was not anywhere close to that intersection that she's claiming lately that she claims she couldn't turn down Truscott because the whole street was blocked off. So yeah, they basically saw her at the crime scene and noted down her plate. That's true. Yeah, the replay, because the initial one we did is very old. It was very quick sample, and there's a much better one that I have not put out. That I have the list of the 100 plus, so maybe I could do that as well, leading up to Donna's trial. Or I don't know when I'd do it, but I'll think this one through. I guess if there's not any trials to cover between now and Wendy's trial, maybe I'll cover this. Sherman Lily, you're saying I should do that. Okay. I'll seriously consider that. I know I've been talking about it for a long time now, but yeah, Lindemont, it really is cray cray. They thought they could get away with murdering Dan Markel. Beach bomb, do a comparison of one of these three testimonies. Yeah, the time it would take to be able to do that, I can't do it with I don't have the tech know how to do that. But yeah, if you could compare what she says lot between the three different ones, but a lot of the questions are not the same and throughout the different ones as well, but there's definitely there's definitely gold nuggets there. It's littered with gold nuggets of things that are incriminating and not credible and deception indicated, if not outright lies. Yeah, Leo's terrified of fireworks. Miriam, yeah, the TV repairman alibi was absolutely ridiculous. I wish they would call him and he could testify as to how Wendy strung it out. It should have been a quick drive there. Yeah, this is what it cost to fix it. You can buy one a lot cheaper. Instead of him leaving after a couple minutes, she strung it out to like holding him there for like 40, 45 minutes. Sounds like the fireworks have ended though. Here, 11:46. All right, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and sign off here. It's almost midnight, so you all have a great 4th of July weekend. And not sure if I'll be on Sunday night, but I'll be thinking about what you said and talk it over, and we will decide what course to take. Lon, let you're saying Georgia emphasized how Wendy threw up at the celebration dinner with Charlie. What would this make the jury think? That's there's something I think is bad news that she received. I think that's why she threw up, if that's even true. So I don't believe at all it's because she hadn't eaten in 2 weeks that she threw up. So it's maybe something that made her really sick to her stomach, like some detail that would make her think that this could come back to them. Like maybe he said, "Oh, by the way, did you know those guys took the interstate back the whole way, the toll interstate?" Something like that could freak her out. So, okay, you guys take care. Thanks for supporting Justice for Dan Markel, and I'll be back here possibly Sunday night. Otherwise, the following weekend. So y'all have a good one. Be safe.